don't necessarily, what I'm saying is you don't necessarily have to announce to the entire world that you're the house to go to when things go wrong, because you don't want every single person, showing up on your doorstep at the same time,
Right. It's sort of like the gun thing. I mean, you don't want everybody showing up at your house when the zombies break out, right?
Right. Lloyd will protect us. He knows what he's doing. Let's all go camp out in his yard and wait for him.
That's right.
Exactly.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 222. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week. This is our 5th Sunday special. And for those of you who don't know what that means, I'm not surprised because we haven't done one of these in a while. I've gotten a little slack. What that means is that we have a special guest today. Kevin Jaeger is one of the brothers Jaeger, who are the hosts of the Survival and Basic Badassery podcast on the Self-Defense Radio Network, and he joins us today for a long overdue chat. I've been meaning to have him on the show, and it seems like a good time to do it. But first, I want to remind you that despite the fact that we're not professional broadcasters, and I think that's a fact that's very self-evident if you've listened long enough, but despite that, we work really hard to bring you a well-produced quality show with great information and interesting guests like our guest today. We don't do this for a living. We're a listener-funded podcast, so we rely on the generous support of great people like Dallas and Mark and Catherine and Calroy and Melvin and Donnie, people who we call the Reformation Gun Club. And you can join them for as little as $1 a month. And that goes a long way to help pay for our hosting and software and equipment, and to keep this show going. And I hope you'll consider joining those great people. You get lots of great benefits, access to exclusive content, early access to each week's show, member discounts, some cool Armed Lutheran swag, and lots more. Plus, you get invited to our monthly online hangouts, which that's another something that I've got to put together for next month. So visit armedlutheran.us/gun club today. Have a look at everything there. And then I hope you would consider joining them and signing up and supporting the show. Just look for a link in the show notes for this episode, armedlutheran.us/222. All right, it's our 5th Sunday special, and that means we've got a special guest. Kevin Jaeger and his brother Chuck are the dynamic duo behind Survival and Basic Badassery podcast. Kevin, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Lloyd, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It's been a long time coming. We traded promos years back, and then when I got onto the board of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and we were looking to expand, I said we need to get some prepping podcasts on here. We don't have anybody talking about that, and I've got a great couple of guys who would be perfect for it. Survival and Basic Badassery podcast is on the Self-Defense Radio Network now, and quick, tell people where they can find you, and we'll get right into.
Now we ended up dropping the badassery and switched it to Survival and Basic Badass podcast.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
Now, we've got a Facebook page at Survival Prepping. If you search that on Facebook, you'll be able to find us over there. And our podcast is on Spotify and iTunes and just about any place you can find a podcast.
Awesome. And check them out at sdrn.us. You can find links to all of their episodes there as well. So give us a little bit of a background here. Tell us about yourself and Chuck. What were you guys doing before you became podcasters?
Oh, I think we were podcasting just without the microphones. We've been talking about these things for years. Chuck and I have both been into prepping for most of our lives, just in the sense that the knowledge and the tools that you have available really can expand your safety net around you. And I think it's important that everybody keeps in mind that things can be volatile.
Yeah.
And things change and shift, as we saw with this pandemic.
Right.
People have just gone crazy about some of these things.
So one night you guys just decided we should be recording this.
Yeah, Chuck actually called me up and said, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And we recorded about 5 or 6 podcasts first, and then we started getting them out there.
Nice.
And ever since that, we've been doing do one a week, try and keep it fresh and try and keep up with what's going on in the world around us.
Yep. Now there are other shows out there about preparedness and prepping. A couple of them debuted early on Self-Defense Radio Network, but sort of eventually faded. At some point, you can only talk about canning beans and storing rainwater so much, but somehow you guys, you're 230 episodes in at this point and still going. Somehow you guys are always finding something fun and interesting to talk about.
Well, there's really an infinite amount of topics when it comes to this sort of stuff. Whether it's building a compost bin, or starting your garden, it's great to have a little bit of a backup, a safety net where you can not just take care of yourself and your family, but also the neighbors around you.
You guys get into some fun stuff beyond just how do I prepare for the next big event. You guys think like 2 or 3 steps beyond that. Okay, some of your episodes, some of the most entertaining ones are the ones sort of stream of consciousness. You're thinking about, you're really into the weeds thinking about, okay, I'm now trying to survive because there's no electricity. We don't have any government. We don't have the safety net that the government has always promised us is not there. And I'm having to fend for myself. We're bartering bullets for cans of cream corn and toilet paper. Where do you guys... Sometimes I wonder, I sit there and I laugh because you guys are having so much fun with it. Where do you get the inspiration for some of it?
Well, I think honestly, between me and Chuck, I think we're both have a serious distrust for counting on the government.
Right.
They don't seem to do the best job at all times.
No.
And I wouldn't just say, the U.S. government. I would say just government in general.
Right. And you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are both veterans, correct?
That's right. We were both Navy veterans.
Very good.
Yep.
Well, thank you for your service. And I'm guessing that your experience might have sort of colored your view of trusting the government a whole lot.
Well, I just feel that I think a lot of people are in the government are working in a bureaucracy that they're kind of appointed to, and they're scared to make actual decisions. It's just not set up for emergency situations, which everybody that listens to our podcast, I think, has a different idea about what they are prepping for and what they're worried about. But in reality, it's the things like this that we're going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's the blizzard where you've got 2 feet of snow and your power goes out. It's those sorts of situations where they can really turn dangerous very fast. And sometimes there's not going to be anybody else around to help you out when you're in trouble.
Right. Well, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions about prepping, and I think, like you said, this pandemic has sort of unmasked a bunch of them. Most people, I think, got their ideas about prepping from reality TV, and but in real life, the prepping that most people are doing is a lot less glamorous and a lot more practical, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. And, I've had a couple of guys that have emailed me, talked to me saying that, they were glad they were storing up that food because, they moved from one job to another and their last paycheck never showed up, and they have to wait 2 weeks for their next paycheck to show up, and they still got to feed their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, those sorts of situations happen to everybody, no matter how hard you work, no matter, how, no matter how intelligently you go about your day-to-day life, bad things can still happen that can put you in a bad situation.
Right. And nobody ever expected that we would be sitting locked behind our, locked at home for a month and a half, 2 months, and people not being able to work. And it's been sort of the standard operating procedure for most people is sort of living to paycheck to paycheck and not really thinking about the future. And now suddenly the people who are quote unquote preppers don't look so crazy anymore.
Yeah. Well, I a lot of that's funny. A lot of people made fun of Chuck because he was storing up toilet paper, me included. I was saying those mice are going to eat all your toilet paper before you ever get a chance to use it. But he turns out, who's laughing now, right?
Exactly.
Turns out he was right.
Who are you coming to when you need a roll? Chuck.
That's right. And I was honestly, it's great to be able to give your neighbors a couple of rolls of toilet paper,
right?
Instead of you don't want to have to take a shower every time you go to the bathroom,
This is true. And if the power goes out and you don't you don't have city water, then you don't have the opportunity to take a shower either. So
that's right. Yeah, and I think that a lot of people are saying about this pandemic, it wasn't bad. It wasn't that bad, and that is the case in a lot of places. I'm in a precarious spot up here, but there are a lot of people that are really suffering with this.
Yeah,
and so I think it's important we keep that in mind.
So back in 2016, in episode 31, you guys did a show about pandemics, and here we are.
You're dating me here. I
4 years later.
Yeah, that was a while back. I think between our earlier podcasts and our later podcasts, I think we've made quite a bit of a difference in the depth of our knowledge and what we're talking about. But those types of things are important to keep in mind when you're worrying about keeping your family safe, mm-hmm. keeping your kids safe, keeping your neighbors around you and your friends, your family, your community, keeping them safe. I think it's really lack of male leadership in the community that we've been suffering from lately. And I think it's fathers have to really, get back to raising, children, sons that are intelligent, competent, capable.
Right.
And, it's an important thing to do.
We took a question about this subject on the show a couple of weeks ago, and the gist of the question was sort of, is it selfish to be a prepper, to prep and to hoard all this stuff in case something bad happens? But from the way you and Chuck have explained it, and talking to my co-host Pastor Bennett, the idea is not to just hoard it all up for yourself, but you're also thinking about your extended family, your community, your neighbors. If they need something, you're the person, you have enough to be able to help.
That's right. In situations like this, it's really not dire. We can still go to the grocery store. We can still feed ourselves, feed our kids. But, a lot of people are out of work and they can't necessarily just afford to go on the regular, $200 grocery trip every week.
Right.
And, it's difficult, and a lot of people are out of work through no fault of their own.
Right.
And they have to suffer through this, even though they're not responsible for it. And I think that's something to keep in mind, that you're not always able to predict the future.
Right. And I've been saying over and over for weeks, this is going to happen again. I mean, the government has figured out that they can push a button and put all of us in our homes and just say, okay, it's for your own good. And a big swath of the public will just go right along with it. I have no doubt that they'll try this again at some point. So we need to be prepared for it when that happens again, right?
That's right. That's right. We really need to be able to take care of ourselves in times of crisis and be able to help our neighbors out. And, I really feel like these sorts of situations are dangerous in more than one sense. Like you were saying, the government will take away your rights, but they're never giving you those rights back. It seems that,
Yep.
it seems that, was it Ronald Reagan, I think, said that the only thing that lives forever are government programs. And that seems to be the case.
Yep. And so now here we are, almost 2.5 months into this mess, and people are starting to realize that prepping isn't the end of the world, isn't just for the end of the world, and for building a bunker in your backyard. So for those who've never really thought about this question before and have never really thought about being self-sufficient, how do they get started so they're not caught off guard when the next pandemic hits or whatever it is? You don't have to convert your whole suburban backyard into a victory garden or buy a truckload full of MREs, do you?
No, I would definitely recommend changing your whole backyard into a survival garden, but that's just for good nutrition.
Right.
But, I think a lot of people are in a financial situation where they can't just go out and spend $10,000 on preps and things that, it could be an endless amount of dumping money into a hobby that, it's really going to put you at a disadvantage when you really do lose your income and you're already, at a lower tier.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us just aren't millionaires. I know that you are making the big bucks with all your podcast money, and all your non-commercials and all that. But, me and Chuck and I are in the same boat. We don't do any commercials or anything like that. And we do this because we like doing it, not because we're making millions of dollars. But I think the basic thing that I would like to see people have is a 2-week supply of food and water.
Mm.
And, you can go to my Patriot Supply or my food storage or, one of those things and spend $500 or $600 on food. And, that food's going to get there and it's not going to taste great.
Right.
And a lot of them, they say, it's 6 months worth of food if you're eating 1,000-calorie diet. That's not 6 months worth of food, especially in a situation where you're going to be having to hustle a little bit more than you might normally.
Right.
But you can be very cheap, and you can go to go get some of those 5-gallon buckets with lids, some bags of rice, some beans, pasta, honey, dried fruit, oatmeal. It's not glamorous food, but it's a lot better than the rations you'll get from a lot of these
right.
big companies, Yep.
It's still hearty food that will tide you over and fill you up, and there are ways to make it taste good. There's just not a whole lot you can do with that prepackaged stuff.
That's right. And I encourage people to use their preps. It's great to have a 4 or 5 year supply of food, but mice are going to get into things. packages aren't going to be sealed properly and they're going to go bad. You have to kind of keep moving through that stuff, and you don't want to be eating something that makes you miserable. You don't
Right.
want to be eating oatmeal 3 meals a day. So you want to go through your preps so that you learn, this is something the family likes. This is something the kids hate, and you kind of can gear your preps when you're starting off slow, a little bit at a time.
So
you can gear it to the family.
Right. So the starting out is not go out and buy the bland, the stuff that everybody thinks about. You look for things that will keep a long time and that your family will eat. And then you don't just put it away and forget about it. You cycle through it kind of to make sure, so that if this pandemic hits again 10 years from now, you don't find that, your 10-year supply has gone bad halfway through.
Yeah, all your cans expired 5 years ago and they're bloating from botulism. Yeah. But another one of the things that I like to encourage people to do is grow that garden. And a lot of people don't necessarily have the space for it, but I would encourage people to, even if you're just growing one tomato plant, if you're only growing, one cucumber plant, that's fine, because you can always ramp things up. Once you have a basic setup, a basic idea of what you're doing, and it's really a simple thing to do, is to spread a couple of seeds in the spring. I'm happy about this time of year. I've got all my seeds sown. I'm ready to go for this fall. But it's definitely a helpful thing to have a little extra fresh vegetables to mix in with the rest of your preps.
And even if the pandemic doesn't hit, you've got, like you said, you've got fresh vegetables. I grew up on a farm. I grew up with fresh vegetables, and there's just nothing like it. Even if you, like you said, you can just plant a little corner garden in your backyard, you're learning how to do it, for one, right? And I guess then once you kind of get the hang of it, you don't want to start huge, I guess. So get started, figure it all out, and then you can grow from there. You can, that was a bad pun. But you could expand. You could expand the garden from there if you wanted to. Once you've figured out, okay, here's how it works, and here's what grows well, and here's what I like to eat. No, those didn't turn out very good.
Right.
You can kind of figure it out small scale and then ramp up.
Right. And obviously, different things are going to grow better in different environments, and you have to be conscientious of where you live, and what you plant and what you like to eat.
Yep.
Yeah. But another thing I want to talk about real quick is when it comes to prepping, you really need to be conscientious of your financial plan. You want to be stable. You don't want to be buying. I don't want anybody out there buying preps, with their credit card.
Right.
And I think having a little bit of cash in your house and a little bit of cash in the savings account goes a long way for emergencies like this.
Right. So you guys, when you're talking prepping on your show, you're talking more than just food and water. You're talking guns and ammo. You're talking about credit cards. You're talking about money. You're talking about gas for your vehicles. You're talking about all the different things that you've got to prepare for, or to that if you don't think about it, when the next thing hits and you get in the car and you think, okay, well, we got to bug out, and we forgot to put gas in the car, and we don't have any in the tank somewhere.
Right. Now, I remember not too long ago, Hurricane Irene came through my area.
Yep.
And hit us pretty hard, knocked a lot of power out, and gas pumps just weren't working for, a lot of places for a week. And you're not going to be able to get back and forth to work if you were on E and you woke up and all the power was out and the gas stations aren't working.
Yep.
It's important. I think it's a good rule of thumb to keep your gas tank half full.
Right.
All the time. Fill up halfway. You don't have to wait till it's the light comes on,
Right. Like most people do.
Right.
So 2 weeks of food, two weeks of water. What's a kind of rule of thumb? How do you get there to begin with? You were when we talked last week, you were talking about gradually growing your preps. How do you do that and not go out and blow a whole bunch of money at once?
Yeah. Well, I'd say every time you go to the grocery store, be conscientious of what you're buying and maybe double up on a couple of things. Cans of soup, cans of beans, pasta. All those things are great things to have on hand regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And to buy a couple extra of what you're already buying and what you're already eating
right.
is really the way to go. You don't want to get 2 weeks into eating food that you haven't been eating. And then, either you're going to the bathroom all the time or you can't go to the bathroom at all. You don't want to be in that situation either.
Nope.
So it's, I want the guys to think about, just expanding the amount of food they have in their pantry, setting up a shelf in the basement and adding a couple of cans every week, adding a couple of boxes of pasta, a couple of bags of beans, every week without going out and, spending $300 on something that you can't necessarily afford right now.
Right. You had an episode a few weeks ago, biggest prepping fails. And I'll link to that show in the show notes, but without giving the whole thing away so that everybody will go and listen to the rest of it. What would you say is the biggest mistake that most, especially people who are new to it, the biggest mistake they make?
Well, I think one is what we just touched on, the going out and blowing hundreds of dollars on something before you really know what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the other things that I think is a big deal is storing up all this food, getting all sorts of things together, and then doing something dumb like going on a podcast and telling everybody in the world that you've got all that food stored in your house. You don't necessarily. What I'm saying is, you don't necessarily have to announce to the entire world that you're the house to go to when things go wrong, because you don't want every single person showing up on your doorstep at the same time.
Right. It's sort of like the gun thing. I mean, you don't want everybody showing up at your house when the zombies break out, right?
Right. Lloyd will protect us. He knows what he's doing. Let's all go camp out in his yard and wait for him.
That's right.
Exactly.
So a little bit at a time, set a goal, I guess, for a couple of weeks worth of food, just slowly build that up, and don't go announcing it to the world that you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think it goes hand in hand with that. It goes home safety. You really need to keep your house secure and think about those types of things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's security cameras or just going through your doors and windows. I know I've made the mistake where I've locked myself out of my house. Most of you guys have that experience at one point or another in your life.
No, I've never done that.
And think about how hard it would be to break into your house if that happened to you.
Right.
You all know where that screen is.
That one that you can pry back and climb underneath. Yeah.
Another thing I'd like to think about is all the little things that people overlook when it comes to that sort of thing is fire extinguishers and smoke detectors and the things that you need in an emergency in your medicine cabinet. A lot of those things get overlooked when it comes to prepping, and those are equally as important in my view.
Oh yeah, definitely, but they're not as exciting.
They're not as glamorous as saving up beans and rice, right?
Right. The doomsday prepper.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where we all like to think that we're a badass, and if somebody kicked in our front door, they'd be the ones in trouble, But you might not be home when that happens. Your wife might not be home. Your kids might be home from school, and your wife and you are still at work. You have to be conscientious that if somebody's trying to get in the house, they can't just necessarily push their way in.
Yep. What is a way for people to kind of figure out where their shortcomings might be, not just in terms of food, but in all these areas, security and money and all the other things, the little things that you talked about? Is there do you have tips, or is there a particular episode you could point them to for just sort of how to analyze, all right, here are my deficiencies that I need to address, and how to go about addressing them?
Yeah, I think that's an important thing for anybody that's prepping, or just anybody in general is how prepared really are you? How long can you go? Say, all right now it's Tuesday. I went shopping on Saturday. I'm not going to go to the grocery store for anything for the next week. You're going to realize that pretty quickly you're going to be down to eating peanut butter out of the jar with your finger. And, you're, another great way to do this is to, go down to the main breaker box in your house and turn it off. How long before you really get uncomfortable with the situation you're in?
Oh.
What is the cause of that? Is it, you live in the Northeast and it's 20 degrees in your house by the end of the day?
Mm-hmm.
Is it, you live in Texas down there and your air conditioner's not working? Think maybe I should get a generator.
Oh God.
Those types of situations. I turned my internet off for a week last fall. And, there's a lot of crying and temper tantrums.
Start to say, how did your kids react to that?
Yeah, well, the kids were fine. I was the one with the temper tantrums. Once that was all done, the kids realized that they could go outside still and do kid things. But I couldn't watch Netflix, and it was traumatic. But it is a good idea to put yourself to through some minor tests when you still have the hospital, you still have ambulance and police and fire departments, and you can kind of put yourself in a situation when you have a safety net, so that when you don't have a safety net, you realize what you're going to be short on.
Right.
I know Chuck was joking around with me that he had his power go out and he was all set up and went to make his coffee, and then realized he didn't have an hand crank coffee grinder, and he just had beans. And he had years worth of beans, but he didn't have any way to make it into coffee.
Those are the little things you got to think about. Those little K-cup pods won't brew themselves.
That's right. That's right.
No matter how hard you blow the water through them, it just won't work.
It just doesn't work. Another thing that I think is a great way to deal with that is to go on extended camping trips. I try and do at least once a year with the whole family. Try and do a week out, where we pack everything in and set up the tents and set up the campfire and the cook stove, and really just try and rough it. And I know a lot of you guys do that. A lot of the guys listening to the podcast do that anyway. But I really want to encourage you guys to bring the neighbor's kids with you. Bring the kid with you whose dad is disabled. Bring the kid with you whose dad isn't in the picture.
Right.
Those kids are really craving that stuff, and they really love to get out there in the woods. And their teacher's been telling them they have ADHD, but really they don't have anybody that's spending time with them outdoors and teaching them, fishing,
right,
hunting, tracking, those types of things. They love that stuff. And, peel them away from the video games and take them outdoors for a little while. They'll really appreciate it.
Get everybody outside their comfort zone and see, and make a test out of it. How well did we prepare for this trip? Because
That's right.
inevitably you're going to get out there to the campsite so far from home there, and nowhere near a store, and you realize, oh crap, I forgot X, and now we're going to be out here for a week, and I can't go get it.
Yeah, you just don't have it. Charge your laptop or your phone up all you want. It's going to get to 2 days, and that thing's not going to be working anymore. I let my kids, when they come with me, bring all their electronics and use them as much as they want. But the truth is, it's just not going to last. Eventually they're going to have to suck it up and go swimming in the cold water and go hunt for some, raspberries and look for some apples. And
I see. Okay. So that's a smart plan there. Instead of telling them they can't bring it, you just let them bring it and they just can't charge it. And
that's right.
It's going to die.
Yeah. Eventually it's not going to last.
So what have you guys been doing to get through this crazy pandemic? You've been binge watching Netflix, sounds like.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm one of the suckers that has to work every day still. Chuck is in the same situation. I think he's actually working more now than he was beforehand. So we're in a sense we're lucky that way. So but I think that this shutdown, a lot of people being out of their steady work, I think it can be an opportunity. It can be an opportunity to start looking for that job that you really wanted. Can be an opportunity for start doing that creative thing that you wanted to do. Great opportunity to get your garden started. I think if we look at this in the right way, I think this is really a blessing that it's been as mild as it has been. And still, it's still a difficult situation for a lot of people, for everybody, really.
Right.
And
but rather
we
than
really have to
on
look at these.
Yeah, rather than dwell on the negative, find some way to make a positive out of it. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And I really appreciated Pastor Bennett. I was listening to your last episode, and he was talking about Joshua and Pharaoh and storing up, and it really is the right and the responsible thing to do, I think, in my opinion, to prepare for the future and prepare for the adversity that you're going to encounter. It's going to happen one way or another, whether it's a family member dying, whether it's you losing your job, whether it's a global pandemic where everybody's catching COVID. It's going to happen in your life, and it's irresponsible to not plan for it in a reasonable way.
Yeah. And if you're going to look for silver linings, maybe it's one of the things that we talked about a little bit in the last previous episode was this idea that maybe people will start to realize that they can do more for themselves, right? I feel like society has gotten to this point where we just expect that life's going to be peachy every day, and strangely enough, we seem to think that nobody's going to die, and we're all going to live forever if we just stay inside and not and wear masks. And
That's right.
But I hope that people kind of come to the realization that there's more you can do for yourself, and that you should do for yourself, because the government's not going to be there when the chips are down, because they're going to have to deal with 10,000 other things before they get to you. Right.
And, I know that the guys that are out of work are, happy to get that $1,200 check that they're sending out. But the truth is that, that's going to be one check, maybe two checks. It's not going to pay all your bills.
No.
You need to really count on yourself, and your own, not just your own preps, but your own skill set. The things that you teach yourself how to do, the things that your dad taught you, and the things that you're teaching to your kids. Those are all important things. How to change a tire, basics like that I'm shocked when I run into people that don't know how to, jump their car.
Right.
But, you really need to, be on top of educating your children. And, right now the government takes our tax money and they educate our kids. And because they're the ones educating them, they teach them whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that we be there as parents to teach our kids, everything else,
Yeah. Being self-sufficient isn't exactly one of the things that the government's teaching our kids.
No, sir. That's the truth.
All right. Well, Kevin, say hi to Chuck for us. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hate that it took so long to finally get you here, and it took a global pandemic to do it. But you guys are doing great stuff. I really enjoy listening to the show. And folks, if you have an interest at all in prepping or in preparedness and being ready for that the next whatever it is, the big storm, the hurricane, the tornado, the power outage, the pandemic, because it's going to happen again at some point, go listen to Survival and Basic Badass podcast with Kevin and Chuck. And Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great to have you here.
All right. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me, you can email me at preppingbadass@gmail.com. I do answer all the emails, so you will get a response, but it may take a week or two.
Yep. You're an essential worker. We understand. Takes a little while to get caught up. We're just now getting around to answering our Q&As, so I totally understand.
Yeah, that's how it goes sometimes.
It is. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for all of you who took the time to listen. And be sure to check out the links in the show notes to Kevin's website and the videos, social media, and all that stuff. Survival and Basic Badass Podcast. Go and give them a listen. You will enjoy it, and you will learn a lot, and you will laugh while doing it. They have a great time doing the podcast, and I've really enjoyed listening to it, and I think you will too. Be sure to join us again next week. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.